You brought lunch from home every single day for 3 years. You skipped the vacation your friends took to Miami. You drove past the coffee shop and made your own at home. You kept the same phone for 4 years, even when the screen cracked. You did everything the financial gurus told you to do. You were disciplined. You were responsible. You were cheap. So why are you still broke? Why is your savings account barely moving while people who spend more than you seem to have more than you? Here's what nobody tells you about being cheap. It's not a strategy, it's a trap. And the math I'm about to show you will explain why the cheapest person you know is often the poorest person you know. My name is Mark, and I spend way too much time analyzing why people who do everything right with money still end up struggling. If you've ever felt guilty for spending money on yourself, or wondered why your frugal lifestyle isn't making you rich, hit subscribe, because this video is going to flip everything you thought you knew about saving money. Let me start with a story. Meet two people, Rachel and Mike. Both are 32 years old, both make $75,000 a year. Both started their careers at the same time. Rachel is cheap, she clips coupons, she buys everything on sale. She drives a 15-year-old Honda she paid cash for. She brings lunch to work every day. She hasn't bought new clothes in 2 years. Her monthly spending is about $2,800. Mike is not cheap. He buys coffee every morning. He eats out twice a week. He drives a 3-year-old car with a payment. He buys new clothes when he takes one vacation a year. His monthly spending is about $4,200. Rachel spends $1,400 less than Mike every single month. Over a year, that's $16,800. So Rachel should be way ahead, right? Let's check their net worth at 32. Rachel has $41,000 saved. Mike has $67,000 saved. Wait, that doesn't make sense. Rachel spent $16,000 less per year. Over 5 years, that's $84,000 in savings. How does Mike have more money? Because being cheap has hidden costs that nobody talks about, and those hidden costs are destroying Rachel's wealth while she thinks she's building it. Let me show you exactly what's happening. The first hidden cost is what I call the cheap tax. Here's how it works. Rachel needs new work shoes. The good ones cost $150. The cheap ones cost $40. Rachel buys the cheap ones because she's being responsible. 6 months later, the cheap shoes fall apart. She buys another pair, $40. 6 months after that, same thing, another $40. In 2 years, Rachel has spent $160 on cheap shoes that hurt her feet and look worn out. Mike bought the $150 shoes once. They lasted 3 years. They still look professional. His cost per year was $50. Rachel's cost per year was $80. Rachel paid the cheap tax. She paid more by spending less. Now multiply this across everything. The cheap laptop that dies in 2 years instead of 5, the cheap car repairs that keep breaking, the cheap furniture that falls apart, the cheap tools that don't work right. Studies show that people who consistently buy the cheapest option spend 15 to 23% more over 10 years than people who buy quality once. Rachel thinks she's saving money. She's actually bleeding money, just slowly enough that she doesn't notice. The second hidden cost is even bigger. I call it the opportunity burn. Here's what Rachel does with her time. She spends 2 hours every Sunday clipping coupons and planning her shopping trips to hit 3 different stores for the best deals. That's 8 hours a month. She spends an extra 45 minutes each day preparing lunch and cooking. Dinner from scratch instead of buying prepared food or eating out occasionally. That's 22 hours a month. She drives 20 minutes out of her way to get cheaper gas. She waits in line at the discount store. She researches every purchase for days to find the lowest price. Total time spent being cheap, approximately 40 hours a month. That's a full work week. Every single month. Now, here's what Mike does with that same time. Mike spends those 40 hours on a side project. He freelances. He took an online course that led to a certification. He networked and got a promotion. Mike's income went from $75,000 to $89,000 in 3 years. That's $14,000 more per year. Rachel's income stayed flat. She was too busy saving $3 on laundry detergent to invest in herself. The 40 hours a month that Rachel spends being cheap could have been invested in skills, relationships, or opportunities that actually build wealth. Instead, she traded those hours for a few $100s in savings, while Mike traded his hours for $14,000 in additional income. This is the math nobody shows you. Cheap is about cutting expenses. Wealth is about expanding capacity. And you can't cut your way to rich. You can only cut your way to less broke. The third hidden cost is psychological, I call it, the scarcity loop. When you're constantly focused on not spending, your brain enters scarcity mode. Every purchase becomes stressful. Every dollar feels precious. Every decision is filtered through fear. This scarcity mindset does something dangerous. It shrinks your thinking. Rachel doesn't invest in the stock market because she can't stomach watching her money fluctuate. She keeps everything in a savings account earning 2% while inflation eats 4%. She's losing money and calling it safe. Rachel doesn't negotiate her salary because she's just grateful to have a job. She hasn't asked for a raise in 3 years because she's afraid of rocking the boat. Rachel doesn't start a side business because she can't justify spending money on something that might not work, so she never tries. And she never grows. Mike invests aggressively because he's not afraid of losing a little to gain a lot. Mike negotiates his salary because he knows his value. Mike started a side project because he views money as a tool, not a treasure to hoard. The scarcity mindset doesn't just cost you money, it costs you possibilities. Rachel is so focused on not losing what she has that she can't see opportunities to build what she doesn't. And here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. If you recognize yourself in Rachel's story, you're not alone. Most of us were taught that being cheap is being smart, that frugality is a virtue, that every penny saved is a penny earned. But that's only half the equation, and the half they didn't teach you is the half that actually builds wealth. So if being cheap isn't the answer, what is? Let me introduce you to a different framework. I call it strategic spending. Strategic spending isn't about spending more, it's about spending differently. It's understanding that some expenses are costs and some expenses are investments. Costs drain your wealth, investments multiply it. The problem with being cheap is that you treat everything like a cost. You cut everywhere, you save everywhere, you say no to everything. But when you say no to everything, you also say no to the things that could change your life. Let me show you how this works in practice. Rachel sees a $300 online course about data analysis. She thinks, that's a lot of money. I can probably learn this for free on YouTube. She spends 6 months watching scattered free videos. She learns some things, but never completes a structured curriculum. She never gets the certification. She never puts it on her resume. Mike sees the same course. He thinks, if this helps me get a 10% raise, it pays for itself in 2 weeks. He takes the course, he gets the certification, he adds it to his LinkedIn. 6 months later, he leverages it into a promotion. The course costs $300. It returned $14,000. That's not spending. That's a 4,600% return on investment. Rachel saved $300 and stayed stuck. Mike spent $300 and moved forward. This is the difference between cheap and strategic. Here's the framework I want you to use. Before any purchase, ask yourself one question. Does this expense have a multiplier? A multiplier expense returns more than it costs, either in money, time, health, or opportunity. A gym membership costs $600 a year, but if it gives you more energy, fewer sick days, and 20 extra years of healthy life, the return is infinite. A reliable car costs more up front, but if it saves you 40 hours a year in breakdowns and repairs, and those 40 hours go toward income-generating activities, the return is measurable. A nice interview outfit costs $200, but if it helps you land a job paying $15,000 more per year, the return is obvious. Cheap people see the cost, strategic people see the return. Now let me show you the 4 areas where being cheap is costing you the most. The first area is your health. Rachel skips the gym membership. She buys cheap food because it's cheaper per calorie. She postpones the dentist. She ignores the small health issues until they become big ones. At 42, Rachel has high blood pressure, chronic back pain, and a root canal that cost $3,000 because she didn't fix the cavity when it was $300. Mike pays for the gym, he buys quality food, he gets annual checkups, he fixes problems when they're small. At 42, Mike has energy. He hasn't missed a day of work in 2 years. He sleeps well. He thinks clearly. Rachel saved maybe $5,000 over 10 years by cheaping out on health. She'll spend $50,000 in medical bills over the next 20. The cheapest thing you can do is take care of yourself. And the most expensive thing you can do is neglect yourself to save money. The second area is your skills. The average American spends $0 per year on professional development after college. Zero. But they'll spend $1,800 on streaming subscriptions, $4,000 on eating out, and $6,000 on a car payment. Meanwhile, a $500 course, a $2,000 certification, or a $100 book could add 10 or 20% to their earning power. Rachel hasn't invested in a skill since college. Her value in the job market is the same as it was 5 years ago. Actually, it's less because the market moved and she didn't. Mike spends $2,000 a year on learning, books, courses, conferences, coaching. His skills compound just like interest. Every year he's worth more. Every year his options expand. In 10 years, Mike's income grew from $75,000 to $130,000. That's $55,000 more per year. Rachel's income grew to $82,000, still respectable, but she left hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table because she was too cheap to invest in herself. The third area is your time. Time is the only resource you can't get back, and cheap people waste it constantly. They spend 3 hours researching to save $20. They drive across town to save $5 on groceries. They wait in line for an hour to get a free sample. Their hourly rate on these savings is often below minimum wage. If you make $75,000 a year, your time is worth roughly $36 an hour. Every hour you spend saving $10 is an hour you lost $26. Strategic people guard their time ruthlessly. They pay for convenience when the math makes sense. They outsource low-value tasks. They buy back hours and invest them in high-value activities. Rachel has more hours in her week, but she spends them on saving. Mike has the same hours, but he spends them on growing. The fourth area is your relationships. This one hurts. Rachel always suggests the cheapest restaurant. She splits the bill to the penny. She doesn't buy rounds. She brings her own snacks to avoid buying at the event. She never hosts because it costs too much. Her friends noticed. They stopped inviting her. The networking events she skipped because of the $50 ticket. That's where Mike met his business partner. That's where opportunities were exchanged. That's where relationships were built that turned into referrals, collaborations, and job offers. Being cheap with others doesn't just cost you money, it costs you access. And access is where real wealth comes from. So here's what I want you to do this week. Look at your last month of spending, separate it into two categories, costs and investments. Costs are things that drain value and don't return anything. Investments are things that multiply, whether in money, time, health, or opportunity. Then ask yourself honestly, how much did you invest in yourself last month, last year? If the answer is close to zero, you're not being frugal. You're being cheap, and cheap is keeping you poor. The people who build real wealth aren't the ones who cut the most. They're the ones who invest the most in things that multiply. You can't shrink your way to rich. You can only grow your way there. Rachel is still clipping coupons. Mike just bought his second rental property. Same starting salary, same number of years, different understanding of what money is actually for. Money is not a treasure to protect. It's a tool to deploy, and the best investment you'll ever make is the one you make in yourself. If this changed how you think about spending, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's working hard, staying cheap, and wondering why they're not getting ahead. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what's one thing you've been too cheap to invest in that you know would change your life? I read every comment. Once you see this math, you can't unsee it.